Hi there. Today I'm going to talk about something a little different than I normally do, and it's a different sort of video than I normally do. I'm going to talk about 3 items in my collection today that have great stories attached to them about how I got them, instead of rather just talking about the merch. Also, it's my first crossover event. My friend LSuperSonicQ is going to join me today, and he's going to show 3 items as well that have great stories in his collection. And then we're going to do a second part where he does 3 more of his items and I go with 3 more of my items. So 6 items total per YouTuber, and we're going to have a lot of fun with that. So first, I have this Twilight Princess standee, and I'm sure you've seen this in a lot of my shots, but maybe haven't seen the whole item. I've got a lot of stuff on top of it and a lot of stuff around it. So this is like the good part you can see. I'm worried if I take this hat off, this Skyward Sword hat, that all this stuff would come tumbling down. So I'm just going to talk about how I got it. So back in the day, GameStop used to have a bunch of these displays. Now they've pretty much scaled back on them completely, which is sad. But every once in a while you'll see like a cardboard display. They don't tend to hold up very well over the years, but this one has held up fantastically, even with a bunch of stuff on top of it. But I always put light stuff on top, like ornaments and things. So how did I get it? Well, age-old story of I knew a GameStop employee. So he was my friend, and he worked at the store. And actually on the back of this thing, you can see that someone wrote their name and a number on it. So I totally took it out from under some guy, which is, you know, it's bad, but it is what it is, because he was wanting to get rid of it. He was going to trash it, actually, and they didn't want to call the guy because that was weird. And I've done that before, where there was something that I really standee that I really wanted, or a movie poster, I think it was, and I had my name on file and everything, and they never called me. Sometimes you hear about collectors getting that good item with a phone call, but I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. He didn't call me up. He told me that at some point this thing was going to be trashed, and I happened to be in the store that day, and he was there. He's like, "Today's the day, man. We're going to trash this thing if you don't get rid of it." So here I am in my little Pontiac Grand Am, trying to figure out how to get this thing home. It was a 4-door sedan, but this thing's pretty tall, pretty wide, and you can't really collapse it all that well. I took all the link comes off, and the sword comes off down here, and the logo way down here, that comes off as well. So I took those items off just to help from damaging them, and then stuffed it in the back, and it barely fit in the back seat. And then I drove it home. So that's the first item that I thought had a good story attached to it, is just stuffing this thing in the back of a Pontiac Grand Am to get it home. And it was totally spur of the moment. Like, I had no real room for it. I was in a 2-bedroom apartment at the time, and here I am bringing this huge standee home. So he lived in the closet for a little while until I was able to pull him out and display him. You can see that in some of my old collection photos. Anyway, the next item up for not bidding is my Fox McCloud Prototype figure. Now, for those unfamiliar, he is without a card back because this is the only one in existence. People ask me all the time, where can I go buy it? Well, you can offer me a lot of money for it, but I might not sell. So let's take a look. The figure itself comes with accessories. Obviously they had planned to sell this just like this, with a card back that had Fox McCloud on it. And he has his bazooka and 2 shots, and this mystery cube item meant that they had another accessory spot, or something that they were planning, but they didn't get around to figuring out what that was. So it's just like a placeholder cube, which I thought was hilarious. He also holds a pistol in his right hand. You can see his tail back there. I don't know if I'll ever take him out of the packaging. He has some plastic wrap around him and stuff, but I just want to keep him pristine. The story behind this is, so Toy Site had a toy fair in 2000, and this guy was one of the items that were shown. There was also a couple of Mario figures, Mario and Luigi, and they had like plunger guns and stuff. There was a Metal Mario, which I also have. There's a bunch of Donkey Kong 64 stuff, a lot of Legend of Zelda stuff. And the best story about all these prototypes is I just picked them up off of eBay for pretty cheap prices as they are now. This has been appraised at about $5,000. I think I picked them up for under $100 on eBay. I just happened to stumble upon it. I had a lot of searches going at the time, and this seemed like it was the second wave of that group when I stumbled upon it, because I got some Donkey Kong 64 plushes. I got this guy. Banjo was up, which I also have. I also have a Banjo-Kazooie prototype figure. So a bunch of figures in this wave that were going to supposedly be produced, but the deal fell through. So Toy Site was a branch of BD&A, which you may know now they do a bunch of system accessories and stuff. And they were going to get the Nintendo license and do, like, mass produce these figures. Well, these were the painted ones that were shown at a toy fair, and it's also very rare to have a prototype be painted, because really they send the prototypes off to Nintendo for final approval. But for some reason it all came crashing down. There is Toy Site merchandise that was used under Nintendo license. A lot of the BD&A plushes, they were converted and redistributed through the Toy Site logo. So there is Toy Site stuff that exists. But this next wave, for whatever reason, just didn't come to fruition. So this is the only guy in existence from Star Fox. And obviously he has the N64 renderings for that. So the last item that I have to show before I turn it over to LSuperSonicQ is this Spirit Tracks chest. It's a wood chest that contains a little photosensitive doodad that was originally up here. Then you opened it, it saw light, and it made its noise. And inside is the Spirit Tracks train whistle. And it's just a run-of-the-mill train whistle. I actually have a couple of these, but they have the Legend of Zelda, excuse me, Spirit Tracks launch date, which is 12/7/2009, December 7. And they just wood burned it onto this train whistle. So this probably has the best story out of the three. So Kotaku, the gaming blog, had a charity event that they held in Denver for a few years. I think I went to a couple, one in 2009 and one in 2010. And they just raffled off all of the press junk that they got, and they got mounds of it during that time. And they, every week before the event, they'd post all the stuff in a big heap. And this was the one item that I desperately had to have. But they never showed anything, because I had seen, they did an article about it ahead of time, before they decided to raffle it, to show everyone what Nintendo had sent them. And they showed off the train whistle and everything. So I actually, when I got to the event, it was at a bar, and they were doing some karaoke and stuff. And they were also doing some other things, you know, drinks and whatever. And you could pay to the charity, and when you paid to the charity, you got raffle tickets. And everyone, I think, could only get one raffle ticket, if I remember correctly. And it was just complete happenstance who got what. So ahead of time, I asked Brian Crescenti, I hope I'm saying that right, and my friend David Thomas, who was also there, and they were talking, and I asked Brian Crescenti, hey, are you going to include the train whistle with the Spirit Tracks set to make it a complete set? And rather than do that, he just outright handed me the train whistle. So I had the train whistle that night and didn't really expect to walk away with the chest either. But then lo and behold, my ticket was picked for that, which is like, I don't know the odds of that. So I got the set, the train whistle with the chest. I had the train whistle ahead of time, which, like, you know, normally when you get the chest, you want what's inside it. So I'd figure that more often than not, you'd have, oh, well, can I have the train whistle that goes with it, and be like that guy. But luckily I didn't have to be that guy. But yeah, he handed me the train whistle ahead of time, so I was already walking away with really rare merchandise. But to complete the set and have the chest, essentially for free, for donating to a charity, that was a really great moment in my collecting. I really hadn't had anything stellar up to that point where you walk away with something that's worth a lot of money for not paying a lot of money. But that really was second to having just one of these really rare items. But it's also a really great event. So then, of course, I went the next year and I got the Katamari Damacy Prince puppet, which is also over there. And that was only sent to press. So now I'm going to turn it over to LSuperSonicQ to talk about his 3 items. Take it away.
Hey guys, it's LSuperSonicQ, back for the continuation of this video series, and thank you to Nightram for collabing with me and creating this video. So I'll start with my next item, and it's this guy, which is probably something a lot of people don't even know exists. So this is a plush of Banjo as seen from his appearance in Nuts and Bolts. Now, there's actually a lot of mystery surrounding this plush, and the story of obtaining it is even trickier. So, as for the plush itself, we don't even know where this plush truly originated from. It first appeared, I believe, on Nightram's website back in, I think, the early 2010s. That's where I first saw it anyway. And it was in a thread talking about this plush that someone had never seen it before, and we were trying to figure out where it came from. Now, the most common theory as to where this came from is that it was a giveaway plush from the Gamescom Germany convention from 2007 or 2008, or somewhere along those years. But we've never really been able to prove that. We've never really seen pictures of it at the convention or anything. And so few of them have showed up that we can't really trace them back to the original owners or specific origin. So that's really interesting on its own, but also the plush itself is pretty wacky. Like, you've seen a lot of Banjo plushes before, but this one, like, it just looks really weird with its, like, big beady eyes and its smiling grin, and the colors on it, and of course the, you know, the sort of the patterning and stuff is very reminiscent of Nuts and Bolts. You don't really see this on any other Banjo plush. And the backpack is really nice too. It's too bad that Kazooie wasn't in there. I think mine is actually upside down. It should be the other way, but I've actually never taken this out of the bag. These did not come bagged as far as we know, but when I bought this, it was bagged, and I don't really want to touch it because it's so scarce. I'm afraid it'll, like, disintegrate or something. But the tag actually does say on it, Xbox 360 Live, if you can see that. And the story about how I got this is that I had been looking for this plush on and off for a few years. I like Banjo as a character, but I'm not a big fan of the Takara plushes very much, and the BDNA stuff isn't really my game. So I thought this guy was so original and so unique that I wanted him for my collection. Now, like I said, he's so rare that that's not an easy thing to do, is find one of these guys. So you can call it a fluke, call it whatever you want. One day, I was just browsing eBay, and I ended up finding a listing for this plush. And I went, whoa, there he is! And I was going to buy him, except for the price. He was $450 or somewhere around that price mark. And I said, this might actually be a real value for this plush because it's so rare and scarce, but I don't want to pay that much money for it. So I sort of let it go, and that was that. Then I think maybe a week or so later, the seller dropped the price to $350, and I said, oh, that's a really good price. That's even better. But that's still a little too much for me. I don't really want to pay that much for it. And at this point, I was sort of sweating because I'm thinking, like, there's got to be some really big Banjo collector out there who's going to see this and jump on it. And I thought, maybe I should go for the $350. Maybe I should do it. But I slept on it, and I thought about it, and then I think a week later, he dropped it again to $250, and I said, I'm there. I got to do this. I got to buy this for $250. Someone's going to buy it, especially if it gets any lower. But at that point, without hesitation, boom, I bought it, and it came to me not too long after that, and here he is to this day, and I own him, and I never thought I would find one. But it was crazy because so many of these that you see, which actually isn't even that many, usually they're damaged in some kind of way. I believe one went up right before this one that was missing its backpack, and I would never buy one that wasn't complete, because I'm not like a big enough Banjo fan to just want one in any condition. I wanted one complete. And another thing too that I'm noticing now, the string around his neck holding his little necklace, it sort of looks like it's made of just like a really like flimsy sort of like gold string material, and you can kind of tell in the back it's just sort of like tied together in a really like, I guess like mediocre knot. So I can imagine his necklace falling off or getting cut off or something. Because again, if you just assume this is a promo plush, they obviously weren't made with like the best quality, and my Banjo even has some difficulty just holding up his backpack. Again, though, mine's on backwards, so maybe that has to do with it. But yeah, so this guy is really, really cool, and I'm really glad I have him, and he sits in my collection to this day. So the next item I have to show is this little guy. Now, you might recognize him because he looks like a Kelly Toy Donkey Kong plush, and in fact, that's exactly what he is. However, this one is a prototype. So yes, this is a prototype Kelly Toy Donkey Kong plush, but it might not be the kind of prototype you think. So back a couple of years ago at this point, maybe it was 3 years ago or so, there was sort of an arms race on a website called Taobao, which is a Chinese sort of like flea market site. Back during those times, there was this one seller who just had tons of like boxes that they got from, I guess, random factories in China or something, and they were full of plushes. The cool thing about a lot of these boxes is they were full of Kelly Toy prototype plushes. So Kelly Toy did a Sonic line and a Mario line, which is what they're most well known for. And in these boxes, like I said, were a bunch of prototype plushes. I mean, some of them were retail final, but others were prototypes. And so many new things were coming out during that time that we didn't even know about that were from Kelly Toy. It was really amazing just to see all this stuff. And everyone was trying to buy all of them. It was pretty much who could type in their order quick enough to the proxy service. And things got really, really crazy. And I kept missing when these listings would go up because they'd go up, I'd miss it, and then everyone would buy all the prototypes and I'd lose out. However, one time a box of Kelly Toy prototypes went up and this Donkey Kong was in it. Now, I was late to that party. Everyone had already put in their order before me, but some people said that their orders couldn't go through. So I thought maybe this is my chance to put in a late order and have it go through. Turns out that ended up happening. I put in my order thinking it wasn't going to work. And then a day later, I got an order confirmation saying, you got this. So eventually it came to me from China, and I was able to take a look at it closer to determine that, yes, it was indeed a Kelly Toy Donkey Kong plush. But what this is a little more special than just a regular Kelly Toy Donkey Kong prototype, which is pretty special itself because it's Donkey Kong. These were part of a unproduced keychain line that Kelly Toy was going to make along with their different size plushes. So Kelly Toy made plushes in, I think, the 7-inch scale, the 9-inch scale, the 12-inch scale, lots of those. And this is the smallest one. And it was supposed to be a keychain, which is what we believe. But they never came out. They were canceled. So this is the only small Kelly Toy Donkey Kong in existence. And the tush tag has been cut. That kind of happens a lot in China so that these can't be traced back to the sellers who are selling them because they're kind of not supposed to be doing that. And if you'll notice, a lot of the texturing on his fur isn't there like the final version. So I'm not sure if they were planning to get rid of the textured fur for the smaller keychains or if they just didn't put it on this one because it's a prototype. But at any rate, it certainly is a Kelly Toy Donkey Kong, and he does have his tie here, although it's a little thick, and the DK emblem, it's sort of like an iron-on, but you can see it's pretty big, pretty thick. And yeah, that is the man known as the Kelly Toy Keychain Donkey Kong prototype. And the final item I have to show for this video is this guy. So this is another prototype, however, it's one of more historic magnitude. So this is what's known as a 2-up model, and it was a prototype used in the development process for the Toy Biz Mario Kart 64 figures back in the 90s. So this guy is hand-painted, hand-sculpted, and his head pops off, as well as all his other limbs, because that's how these figures were created in the industry, which I did not know until I bought this figure and I was told that. So the story of how I got this is pretty wild, I think, regarding prototypes. So prior to this, there was a prototype that went up, I believe, the year prior. It was an unpainted wing cap Mario by the original artist, who worked at a company called Avatar Creations in the mid-90s. Now, that company went under before any video game toys could be released. But we had seen pictures of a wing cap Mario from that company before, and there were actually a few on the VGM forums. Now, when I had first seen that figure, I actually didn't know what it was. I didn't really know what prototypes were at the time, so I passed on it and didn't buy it, even though I could have, for only $100. To this day, that kind of haunts me because, well, Nightram ended up buying it. And I didn't know that until he made a video on it, but he was the one who ended up with it, and I could have had it if I had just made a decision sooner. So I was kind of bummed out about not getting that guy. And a year later, this showed up, and I thought, this is my chance to get a prototype. Like I was given a second chance. And I almost blew it again, because this actually went up for bidding on eBay. And it was called something like Nintendo Mario Kart one-of-a-kind, like, statue. It was a really weird title. I don't even know how I found it exactly, but I did. And I was reading the description, and the guy said that it was a prototype used in negotiations with Nintendo for the line. And I thought, this is exactly the kind of thing that I want, a prototype, and the kind of thing that I should have had last year, a prototype. So I thought, I'm not going to miss out on it this time. Now I'm dumb, because I don't think it was a buy it now. I don't think it was any best offer. It was bidding. And I think the bidding started at around $70. And because I was dumb at the time, I believe I dropped one bid for $70 or $80. It wasn't very much than the starting bid. And I think I dropped that like maybe a day, like a whole day before it ended, right? So the danger of doing that is someone could find it and see that someone had bidded on it, and they would purposely bid it up to scare me off. Or just me bidding like what the starting bid was, I could have easily lost it. I don't remember how much money I had at the time, but I remember thinking, I think that I should go more. But I didn't go any more than that. Lucky for me, it sort of worked out because I was the only bidder on this thing. No one else in the collecting community that I was talking to at the time was even aware this went up, so I sort of ended up with it. No one even knew. And it came to me in pieces, and I assembled it shortly after that. And to this day, it sits in my collection. And it was really cool because I didn't even mean to find it, but I did, and I sort of see it as redemption from the one I missed out on the year prior, which, don't get me wrong, the one that Nightram has is really cool. Again, from Avatar Creations, and, you know, a company that never really came to fruition. But I really like this guy a lot, too, because he's fully painted and displayable, and he goes to the iconic Mario Kart 64 line. So the bottom of his shoes are interesting because one is painted and one isn't, which I always thought was pretty curious. And he's really fat, I guess. I mean, I guess the Mario Kart 64 Mario figure is sort of fat anyway, but I feel like this one, the proportions are almost like more exact to what the original vision for this figure was. Obviously, they could sculpt it better because it's so big. But his head does kind of move, his arms kind of move, but it's pretty limited. It's not really meant to be posed or anything. But it's hand-painted. I really, really like how this looks. And this was actually the first prototype I ever got back in 2015. So it's really cool. I'm really glad to have it. And that is the story of this particular figure. So with that said, thank you guys for watching this video. And if you swing over to my channel, you can see the rest of my items and the rest of Nightram's items. So until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Finn.